Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Bass Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio. Hey, good afternoon. It is the 23rd of October. We're approaching Costume Day, Costume and Candy Day. And it's exciting because the last few times I've been in a store, I've seen these giant bags of candy. Like all the candies that you can't find during the year that only exist for whatever reason during Costume and Candy Day or the month preceding it. And the weeks following it as the stores have to clear their shelves of it. And
yeah, that's crazy.
There's an entire
seasonal candies.
Yeah, there's an entire seasonal candy industry out there that where does this stuff, where do they put it all year when it's not costume and candy season?
I mean, it's not like it's perishable, right?
I mean,
unfortunately.
I mean, it's the future food of the ancients. It's eternal.
In the same way in your gut.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of health related research, and it's insane how much sugar just destroys the body. And it's like fruits are almost as bad in the sense of when people binge on orange juice and aren't eating an orange or an apple, they're not necessarily getting the fiber and they're getting way too much sugar. And it's the conflation of fruits and vegetables as equally as healthy. It feels like sugar propaganda. And even further, there's just the idea that people should wake up and eat a bunch of sugar in their cereal or McDonald's and a McGriddle or whatever and start their day with a fucking insulin spike with 20 grams of fucking sugar.
Man,
aside from the actual rest of the meal.
I appreciate a kiss of honey flavor in some granola or some what is it? An oat type cereal, honey bunches of oats. But there's a point where it becomes frosted bunches of oats or sugar laden gobs of sugar coated or sprinkled with oats, and that's no longer cereal. That's a candy.
Well, and even then,
that's too much.
The way cereal servings actually exist versus cereal bowl sizes, it's people will end up eating probably 4 servings when they eat a bowl of cereal, if not 6, because then they I need more.
Yeah, I mean,
because the one bowl's not enough.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. If I get a bowl of Cheerios, I will probably eat more than a cereal bowl in one sitting. Because
it's meant to be healthy, but then you end up eating 8 servings because of the way that the servings are distributed versus our bowls that we are accustomed to as a culture.
I think it's also easy to eat dry cereal that is just kind of splashed or floating in milk. It's really easy to eat it really quickly without realizing how much water it's going to absorb and how much it's going to expand by the time it gets down into the gut.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to pack it in there. It's easier than eating a bunch of cookies. Because at least with cookies,
you really got to delay that second meal or second plate or bowl or whatever when eating, because that 20-minute delay is real. And sometimes it's not enough. And sometimes you gotta go with the second serving, but it's like it's really worth it to wait it out and see if it's like uh actually you've eaten enough and you're gonna get that full signal. It's like really hard to stay disciplined about it, but it's really worth it.
Yeah, like there's some cereals like was it Crispix? It's almost like Chex, but it's corn and rice at the same time. I could eat the entire box in one sitting and completely regret it later that night. But I just wouldn't be. I don't know. It's like the right balance of just sweet enough that it doesn't trigger that I want to keep going, but not sweet enough that it triggers that physical response. It's like, hey, bud, you're done. Like a lot of really like high cuisine, they've figured out salt keeps the system going. Add sugar. Oh, it's time to stop. But with cereal, it's like sugar first, and if you can extract any nutrients out of that, then your digestive tract is functioning properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many of them are like devoid of nutrients because they get roasted away. It's like, man, a lot of the American diet is so processed where I'm like, increasingly I try to stay away from the interior of the grocery store where it's like if it can sit on a shelf indefinitely and it's not like a spice or something, it's like it's probably gonna do the same shit in your gut or in your body some way. And that's where I can feel when I like ingest some really okay. This is the issue. All oils don't.
Oh, oils have shelf life.
Well, it's about the temperature. So it's like the oils are going to congeal at like different temperatures in your body. So like some things that will stay in more of like a liquid form closer to our body temperature, while other oils are going to like harden up. And
yeah, like
shit in our arteries,
like butter. Our body
right.
we can metabolize butter at body temperature, but things like whatever the hell they make the margarine, all the vegetable spreads, almost all of those vegetable spreads require like a caloric value that's like way beyond what our body can generate to process. So it just kind of waits until we hopefully, excrete it. If it makes it through the whole system and doesn't get stuck in like, what are those little pouches along the diverticuli?
Yeah, diverticulitis is no joke.
Like, or palm oil, which just ends up in like a fat sack, and because we can't process it. But it's so delicious, right?
Yeah, and it's like it seems as if the American diet has been turned into like cattle feed to make people stupid, in that when you have all this like cardboard food that doesn't really have any nutrients, that's full of this fat that's gonna like start slowing your blood flow down, especially in your brain, then it becomes more like easy for society to become addicted to those types of foods, where I'm like, when I eat pizza, after not having eaten it for a while, it felt like completely empty calories when you're eating vegetables and steak and shit. And that's where even crappy ground beef, where you're like the McDonald's burgers, there's no fucking nutrients in that shit. the beef is like fed off of corn or whatever like crap it is, and then
The
on
beef,
top of that,
the beef is just an engineered matrix that can hold on to some kind of perfume flavoring that provides the illusion of beef.
yeah,
It's like
I mean, and that consistent across that many McDonald's is really sketch, you know.
it's industrial beef product. It's like, you know,
Right, exactly,
so
exactly. And when you go to even like a grocery store, you don't have to even go to the butcher. Like just going to the meat section in the grocery store, you see the difference between high nutrient meat like versus low nutrient. It's gonna like you can see it. So then when you get this like grayish looking patty from fucking McDonald's that's cooked, and that, you know, they put the brown fucking dye in there, but there's like a little gray tinge to it for various reasons. That shit gets gray, and it's like I don't. There's nothing, you know, against people who eat McDonald's, but having not eaten McDonald's for like, it's been probably 2 or 3. I don't know. It's been a while now. As far as the burgers, it would feel like a punishment to go from like the meat that you can get at a high quality place to that.
Man,
like it's not even worth it.
It doesn't even take long. Like I remember at the beginning of pandemic life, I stopped getting fast food and all of that stuff. And then I think it was like 6 or 7 months into it, Sheila brought home some Wendy's, and I was really excited because it's like, oh, great, a hamburger. And I had the most excruciating gas as a result of not being exposed to fast food for several months even.
Yeah, it fucks you up, man.
It's crazy.
And
like
Wendy's isn't as bad as McDonald's because at least they're
Wendy's is, I think Wendy's is like
meat is like fresher.
I think Wendy's is like on the higher end of drive-through fast food places,
for sure,
that have a drive-through window, because there's some reasonably quick burger places that I would almost call fast food.
Yeah,
but you can't drive into them.
But that's when if I like eat out with a burger, I go to order Red Robin, because then it's like, it's not even about paying more. It's like there's different levels of meat quality that you can tell that.
And buns.
Yeah, exactly. But Bubs is just like
too
far away.
The bun.
No, but I'm saying Bubs is like the other place in town that serves good meat, and that's where it's just too far away.
That place also has really good buns.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, as you're saying, if it's not like if they don't at least have a brioche bun option, it's probably not like fresh meat. Because why would you put frozen meat on a fucking brioche bun?
You know, I've tried to. I've even taken like the pre-shaped frozen patties from Kroger and made my own, like my home style version of like a Big Mac for Sheila. I made us home style Big Macs one time, and it didn't taste anything like a Big Mac because I don't have the McDonald's, fairy dust. I don't have the McDonald's crack to sprinkle on my fucking burgers and I don't have a flat top that cooks like theirs, or the steam cooker or whatever they use. But I tried really hard, and I couldn't get close enough to that flavor. And so there's definitely something in it, and I'm not sure if it's the old meat, but even the frozen patty from Kroger can't turn into a McDonald's burger.
Well, they have this. Well, here's another thing. The reason you can't get the fries flavor at McDonald's is because they put beef bouillon in their fries. So it's like there's certain specific recipes that they're using that are just going to make it impossible to like reproduce the McDonald's flavor.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if you use like the same bun type and the same like Thousand Island dressing type, there's going to be something about the formula for their burger flavor that you're not going to be able to buy off the shelf because it's proprietary, unless they get to a point where they need to start selling it.
The secret is old gray meat.
Oh god. What's it called? Rally started selling their fries, so that's where I'm like, I get Rally's fries from the fucking frozen section.
Rally's fries are good.
They are.
They're real good.
But Rally's is like not good.
No, Rally's is nasty.
It's like in the sense of when you eat it, you're like, oh, your taste buds are tricked into thinking this is like an enjoyable experience, but then your body immediately starts paying for it.
Well, so okay, when I eat a Rally burger, I get the experience of like, this is what a burger is supposed to aspire towards, but it doesn't quite meet the full. I mean, if you get like the double Big Buford with like, what is it? Yeah, the 2 patties or whatever, and they go light on all of the condiments, but there's still like, a couple slices of tomato and some lettuce, very little mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, onion, 1 or maybe 2 slices of pickle or no slices of pickle depending on the day. and a big stack of fries. That's actually a really good meal. It's enjoyable, and it might be worth paying the price later, because if you get the fries right after they change out that lard block for a new thing of oil, and they don't taste like burnt fries, and you get a lightly dressed burger, it's fantastic. And assuming that they've cleaned their flat top in a reasonable, within a reasonable time frame too, because that's the other key is like flat tops have a distinct flavor, and it like builds right to the point that it becomes too much. And so if you can get right in there, right as it's like in that prime window where there's just enough grease on it that it's got that flavor, but it's not too much, it's not getting burnt. That's what you look for. But how do we fine tune showing up at a Rally's establishment so that those conditions are met? That's like impossible to predict.
Yeah, and the crew has to give a fuck too.
Yes, we've got to find a Rally's with a crew that gives a fuck and can let us know like at what intervals these things are happening, so that these things can be coordinated. So we've got to have an inside man at Rally's. Man, that's a terrible undercover gig. It's like the worst undercover job. Hey, it's like, what's your assignment? Oh God, you're being assigned to Rally's. Sorry, dude.
Well, and it's like their particular menu isn't worth all that.
No, it's really not.
Like when
I described a detuned burger, not a full tuned burger, but like a underdressed burger, and that's what you got to do there. And otherwise, it's too messy, and it also probably really fucks the gut up.
Yeah. I think there are people who work in kitchens that work in like a Red Robin type, and whether they're like trained chefs or not, I think that gives them a sense of like, not everyone, obviously, but a lot of times they'll have this sense of like, they want to send things out as best as possible because like they don't want anything sent back.
Yeah.
But then it's only going to come back on them if people start complaining. There's no real passing the ball when there's like a line chef and a prep cook. Yeah. There's like only a couple of people that can get response, or like if something's too salty, and it's probably the prep cook, and the prep cook gets in trouble. So they try to keep things not from being salty, so it doesn't come back on them. Whereas like that, there's no responsibility in fucking McDonald's like that.
Yeah,
except for the manager, and that's just to get things out and fast.
Well, the
and
manager's job
accurate.
The manager at McDonald's, their job is to apologize and to give the person a coupon for a free burger.
Mm-hmm.
That's their role, and maybe to like make sure that people show up and to yell.
And that's really the only person that actually has any semblance of responsibility.
They're responsible for yelling at the employees. That's such a terrible job.
Yeah. Management's really weird, and the infinite growth paradigm where there's actually humans involved and not robots, but then the humans get treated like robots, and that's I think the root of a lot of the antisocial customer behavior. Like you have all these people going out and getting served and then treating their servers like shit. And it's like, why are you even in public if you're gonna get the nerve? Like, what's the name? The Corden, James Corden, whatever the dude. I don't even know him because he got in the public news for fucking being a dick to his waiters. But it's like, you have no business going out in public if you're going to be like blaming people for shit that you could have done for yourself in the first place. So if you're going to like go commission somebody, you better fucking be nice about it. Even if they get some shit wrong, you better fucking give them the benefit of the doubt. They might have a bad day. Maybe they just fucked up. Who cares? Like the idea that people can be rude to customer service for like, unless it's like, direct personal insult, obviously. But there's been times where somebody like completely fuck up my order and it's like, whatever that person, if they were the one that passed the information along, what's yelling at that person going to do to help things move forward? Not one time has yelling ever made anything actually better. The person yelling may get what they wanted, but they didn't actually make the shit better. And it's like, I just don't understand when people, because then the funny thing about it is like, because I'm never confrontational when people get shit wrong, they like overcompensate because I'm not being mean to them because they're so used to other people being mean. Like, what's it? That it's not Laguna Cantina. The Viva Mas. Viva Mas, they like fucked up my order and gave me, I think we ordered like a vegetarian enchilada and they gave me a seafood enchilada. And I was like, hey, it wouldn't be a big deal, but I explicitly didn't want a seafood enchilada because we're inland and I just like don't want to take the risk. I'm like, can you guys just like refund me for it or whatever? And they gave me like $50 worth of shit for not being a dick. And that's where I'm like, I just, I got way more than what I got messed up, but just like not being a dick. I wasn't like overly kissing their ass or anything either. It was just a matter of like, this thing was wrong. Is there any way I can get it like refunded? Whatever. Oh, sure. Here's like a full meal for free in addition, just because you were nice. I'm like, if people just understood that, it's amazing to me that grown adults don't understand that being nice ends with better results more often than being a dick. Like when you escalate it to be a dick to get your way, like, yeah, sometimes you get your way, but more often than not, like, just being nice is gonna actually get you your way anyway. And you don't end up with like a tense confrontation that didn't have to happen.
We don't live in a nice society, though. That's like,
Well, and it's like,
everything in the media is like confrontational or a competition or a cutthroat or take advantage of a situation. Everything is always about being first, and it people don't even have to be right; they just have to be first.
it's really,
They just have to win, 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 win. Go team.
yeah,
Tribalism.
yeah. News is really, really.
And but it bleeds into everything. It's the example that everything is that we're given. Everything is a competition. Even science is a competition. Like the complete body of human knowledge, the total body of human knowledge shouldn't be a competition. Just simply being able to contribute to it should be the goal.
Well, it's because they have to compete for funding.
Yeah.
And it's like those resources have been made scarce arbitrarily. While it's amazing how much money is put towards military, industrial, and subjugation. Where it's like if all that money was taken and put, I mean, not even all of it, just like a third of it was taken and put towards arts and humanities, like what would that look like in difference of?
So in the last year, no, in the last 10 months, in the last 10 months and 23 days, Ford has issued more recalls and recalled more vehicles than they did for the entirety of 2021. And it's a big deal because they're spending too much money on warranty and recall services. And so they hired some dude from JD Power to fix their boat. And his goal is to shift spending from like whatever inordinate amount of money they're just burning on fixing things after the fact to put it into R&D and quality assurance. Because at some point in the last decade, a lot of car companies started putting a lot of technology in their cars because the cost of technology is coming down and the quality of programmers and the availability of programmers is going up. And cars are more and more computer centric. They're more technology centric than they ever were before. And so the problem, of course, is well, they can make a machine, but since there's so much computer integration, we're in this phase of like over the air updates and it might not actually be an issue with the physical hardware. It could just be the way that the sensors are reading the data and how the computer responds. So these things, I mean, it's kind of twofold. It's kind of a pain in the butt because it's like, hey, cars didn't need fucking software updates every 6 months in the past, but now they do because lo and behold, we're relying on computers more and more. And sometimes the chips have issues and they have to replace things. And so, fine, whatever. This is like a growing pain. But the technology is cheaper. The cars aren't getting cheaper. They're just getting more technology and becoming slightly more expensive. And then if the cars aren't getting any more affordable, and it just makes me think that whatever OPEC is doing, if they were actually interested in preserving their gasoline economy, they would be, increasing production, and which would lower the cost of the product, which would enable people to buy more of it, so they could reinforce the gasoline economy instead of cutting production so prices can go up, for a very short term. It doesn't make sense. It's
like the interests aren't 100% about just profit anymore, fortunately, on the one hand, but then on the other, it then ends up playing out where instead of having proper access they use the excuse of trying to like increase the cost while reducing the supply to reduce dependency, while the customer ends up paying for it all anyway. So that's where it ends up being this weird, like, as the customer, we're paying the local and federal taxes to use it, and then we're paying for the actual cost of it in the profit that the company that produces it receives on top of the cost. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. So the actual cost of using gas is like dependent upon multiple parties getting their cut. And that's like beyond OPEC. It's like then OPEC is its own entity that has its special interests. So it's like there's so many special interests that it's as if they all don't care about the actual potential for the earth to become uninhabitable for humans. And they're just like, we'll just get our profit as long as we can, with the appearance of scaling down for the sake of climate change, when it's just about actually appearing like they're scaling down.
Running all of the oil facilities requires oil. So it's like a machine that runs on the stuff that it produces. Their production costs go down when they increase production. The more oil that's siphoned out of the earth, the more fuel they produce to increase the availability of ships to, to fuel ships to increase.
Yeah, but then it also increases the volatility of the ocean currents, which then causes more destruction to the oil rigs, which then they have to so it's not just like a one-to-one increase in output, increase in profit, because there is a point of diminishing returns where even at the scale of economy, it's like producing more is not going to result in the equivalent loss in cost for the like second, like the machines that run off of their product. But that's where it's like they're never going to tell us when they pass that point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And they're just going, that's where I'm like,
so here's like
where there's not the lack of transparency.
Here's where my brain went with all of this when I was pondering this stuff earlier. Like, technology, as it gets smaller, it gets faster, it gets less expensive, it becomes more affordable, it becomes more distributed.
To a point,
and then it reaches like saturation, and then we've got like iPad Plus and iPad Pro Plus and iPad Special Edition Limited Steve Jobs Plus Pro Tim Cook model.
Well, it's like the iPhone started getting more expensive once it hit like $600 as a low point.
Yeah.
Then the new model started getting expensive. It's the same with monitors and same with televisions. Like the big screen, you could get a 60-inch television for like $400 at one point, but that was the low, and it's never gone below that.
Yeah, I think I got a 50-inch TV for like $400. Like it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I think the 50 inches were like 400, and it was like 2019 or 2018. And then the 60 inches were like 400 in like 2019, 2020. But then it never like went below that.
Whoa, you can get a 65-inch 4K TV for $350 from Best Buy right now.
Oh, shit. Yeah. See
that? Holy crap.
Oh, well, we're coming up on...
yeah, it's true.
Fucking Black Friday.
You can get a 65-inch Samsung 4K TV for $500.
Yeah, so then that's where it's like instead of going to 70, then now it's like it's more incremental. So now it's like 65. So that $400 floor is like
You can get a 70-inch 4K display or TV for $420 from Best Buy.
And that's like, well, once
That's
it's like
insane.
tax, it's like 480.
Yep.
So it's like really
Walmart $400.
Yeah,
What
it's
the
like
crap?
once you
Who has a wall big enough for these things? Like, really?
well, but this is like that's where they'll figure out what is the point of diminishing returns for people, because once you have like a TV that's bigger than your car or truck's capacity, then you have to get a truck rental, and then you have to get insurance, just because even though it's cheap, you want to protect your shit. So
Walmart.
it's like the costs, like it appears one way, but for the consumer, it like starts to increase again. Like you said, you have to have a wall big enough. If somebody lives in an apartment, they're not going to be able to get like an 80-inch television.
Let's see. I mean, a 75-inch TV is it's only $500.
Well, and even then, yeah, whenever I bought the last one, I was looking at the 70 and 875, but it's like it's too much. When you have, unless you're making like an actual home theater that's a theater space, once it gets to like 75, 80, it's like too much.
75 is the cutoff. After 75, the price for TVs just goes up. I'm not finding any 80-inch TVs for less than $1,000. It looks like more than that, like $1,400. That's a lot. That's a lot for a TV. Oh, 98-inch television, $8,500.
Yeah, and it's like, again, there's gonna be, maybe 100 people who buy that 85-inch or 98, and on the way home, about 10 of them are gonna fucking break it, because transporting a 98-inch television is like not anything anybody's accustomed to. So if they're gonna be the type to think, oh, I can get it cheap or get a deal and put it in on my own. Nope, they're gonna fuck up something, because a 98-inch television, you need probably 3 to 4 people to carry that.
You'd need at least 2 people, a dolly, a strap, a ramp, and a winch just to get it all into the back of the truck. And I'm operating
just because of the awkwardness.
Well, I'm just operating from I've moved pianos, and that's the minimum to move a piano. And you want 3 people or 4. Mm-hmm. You want like a lot of people to move something that big. That's huge.
And to be able to move it without damaging the screen.
I mean, that's 8 feet long or 8 feet diagonal. That's a giant object. That's a freaking like full-size bed. Made of plastic.
Yeah, so that's where, again, there have been incremental increases in the size of screens and the quality of the screens, and we're hitting this point where it's like, if it's every 2 years, then it's another 5 inches that goes down to the $400 line. Then it'll be another 2 inches. Once it gets to like 80, it might only be, now 2 years out, it's like the 82-inch that's the $400 one or whatever. But eventually, we're not going to be able to have 100-foot monitors for $400 or 100-foot screens. You know what I mean?
But how far are people trying to sit away from their monitors? Seriously.
For $400, like, it seems like a good idea.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to be able to watch my television from outside through a window too. But
No, I know for a fact that you can see our screen if the windows are open from like 200 or 300 feet away, and it's like it's not. You can't necessarily see like well if obviously the windows have to be open at like the right time of day. If it's like night and it's like very easy, or like dusk.
yeah,
The daytime, the reflection makes it more difficult. But I was watching a boxing match yesterday, and fucking it was like a Dutch broadcast, and it's European, so they don't, they're not giving a shit about like nudity or anything. And there was like this naked chick fucking tits out, and I like my back was turned and I didn't realize it, and Yasi walked in and like shut the windows, and I'm like, what's going on? And it's like you turn around and fucking tits everywhere. And I was like, oh shit. But it's
not
like
just titties, but
it wouldn't
giant
be a big
titties.
deal. It wouldn't be a big deal if they weren't giant, where if it was like, a fucking 30 or 40 inch TV, it wouldn't be that big a deal. On a 98 inch TV, somebody's calling the fucking cops.
They'd be the size of like extra large pizzas.
Somebody's calling the cops.
We're talking like a
because they can
22
see it
inch
down
pizza.
the street. They're like, hey, somebody down the street's got fucking porn on. It's like a block away. Yeah.
Whoops.
So that's where I'm like, I know when I've like gone to take out the trash, I've like looked to see from how far I can like see the screen, and it's like, yeah, at certain times of the day you can't see it at all, but other times you can see like what I'm watching from fucking 300 feet away.
But that also means that you can take the trash out while watching the fight.
Oh yeah, and I've done that.
And like,
that's exactly what that's for, in the sense of like, yeah, there's times where I've put shit on and then gone outside and like watched the fight from like outside, and turn it up to the point where it's not gonna annoy the neighbors, but you don't always want to be inside. And when there's like a swivel, so you can like turn the angle too, which is also like, there's things about home modification or making things more useful for your environment, where it's like, I don't think people are making uses of their space, in the sense of like, I mean, you clearly do, but when you go into other people's homes, it's not that they're lifeless. It's more so, it's like they're following conventions and don't make things necessarily like for them, where we have a friend who built, like, you helped them build a fucking game table, and it's like the idea that somebody would dedicate an entire space to a game that they enjoy is like, that's going to be weird for other people who dedicate their spaces to only things that society tells them to like dedicate their living room, or this is your bedroom, or this is.
We moved that table recently, and we had a third person helping us, thankfully, because that thing was awkward to move with two people. But I think it's very awesome to see people dedicate an entire room to something, or an extensive portion of their yard to an activity, or anything. Like some people have patios just because they have a grill, and that's all they do is they just use their grill on it. And other people have a patio and it exists so they can have plants. And other people have a outdoor living room. And I'm always really interested to see how people use their spaces. But I think that like people we're told that it's a living room, so it can't be anything else. We're told that it's a kitchen, so that's all it can do. I see a kitchen as kind of a laboratory for things that I can eat primarily, but it does a lot of things. And
Well, yeah. How many people have kitchens and eat out like most of the time?
I don't know,
It's
but
like,
every
well,
time I drive by like restaurants or fast food places, there's always somebody in there, unless it's like, 2 a.m. If I see somebody in some restaurant at 2 a.m, I assume that they're the cleaning crew, and I don't pay any attention after that.
yeah, and it's like the idea that people are like buying these homes with all these spaces that they're doing because they're conditioned to think that these things are like how you uh, signal societal assent. Then nobody takes it seriously. Like, I know we've talked about it, but I actually went and looked up accounts from people who own Lamborghinis, and it's not an enjoyable experience for them in that now they've the way that they frame it is like a lot of them are not shy about saying that like they got it to get women's attention, but then they only get the attention of like kids and other car guys. So it's like exactly the opposite of what the effect they wanted. And then on top of that, I guess the women that see them driving that car or that type of vehicle assume that they're like players or playboys or whatever. So then it like makes them even more averse to dating that type of guy. So it's like
These fools.
Yeah, it's like if people thought that buying a Lamborghini was going to make them have more friends and have women be more attracted to them, it's like the exact opposite, because it only attracts people who are like vapid enough to be attracted to the car. So it's like I think only a vapid person would think like that. But it's funny to see their accounts of like buying a fucking Lamborghini and then not getting the type of attention that they wanted, but getting a whole different type of attention that is like not enjoyable, and they have to like make lemonade out of it, where you're like, you can tell that they want to make it seem like they're having fun, but they're not having fun. It's like totally like this novelty shiny thing that, because they're not the center of attention thing, only works on the wrong type of person, and that it's like that shit wears off.
I consider myself to be a car person, a vehicle person. The only time I'm having fun is when I'm doing vehicle related things. Like driving it is fun. Fixing things is fun. Sometimes it really sucks. But I don't think that it's at the point that it's only about getting attention. That's like, that's not about driving. That's not about maintaining the vehicle. That's not about doing any of the things. There's no truck stuff in getting attention. Truck stuff is like pulling things and hauling shit and getting dirty and driving in dirt. The fun is in the doing. It's not in the thing. I think that's the dilemma, is that the Lamborghini is this iconic, it's a trophy. And so the trophy only matters to people who care about that sport. Oh, you've got a Lamborghini? I like that. I like Lamborghini trophies too. That's all it really means. I'm sure that they're fantastic. They look beautiful. And I'm sure that they're insane to drive. If you can afford to drive a Lamborghini, great. But I think the person that wants a Lamborghini probably needs to like not do it because they want to pick up chicks. That just seems like a terrible reason to buy a hypercar.
Oh, of course, but that's also why they then don't get any fucking like slack from the mechanics, and the mechanics are taking every goddamn dollar that they possibly can. Where you read some of the stories of these owners where they like take it in and get some shit fixed for like 25 grand and then drive it off the fucking lot and end up fucking something up and have to turn around and put 30 grand more into it, where you're like, the numbers of, they're like buying whole new vehicles that aren't Lamborghinis when they're fixing a Lamborghini.
I mean, you just,
the cost
for $20,000 right now, you can buy a used WRX that'll go hella fast, like stupid fast. And for $50,000, you can buy, or fairly recently on the market, like Mustang GT, and it'll go hella fast. You can buy a Charger for that much too, and it'll go unbelievably stupid fast. But it's not about fast for those guys. They want to be seen in a Lamborghini too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They never read The Emperor's New Clothes.
Man. I just can't get enough of rich people burning their money and like not realizing what they're doing and thinking that they're like getting one over on people. Like with NFTs, it's been so great to watch NFTs crash and burn the way they did, just because like, oh, well, there's multiple reasons. Aside from the fact that 98% of them were fucking terrible art, then you get terrible things like sports cards of esports players that are also just completely don't belong on a fucking card of any sort, like a commemorative card. And then you see them all with their fucking too much Monster Energy drink fucking cheeks and doughy arms all crossed as if they're trying to like look like badasses, and they all take the fucking same pose, because if you don't actually have any muscle tone, then you just have to like kind of cross your arms to make it seem like you're big. And this is like the default fucking, oh yeah, I'm a badass, like I'm gonna cock my head back and cross my arms like fucking Pawn Stars thumb looking people. It's like just because you're fucking big doesn't mean you're badass. And I think there's like the Texas, and if it's bigger it's better thing that I think
it's just I think it's just everything's bigger in Texas. It's not necessarily true. Better, it's just everything's bigger.
But I think they thought that bigger makes things better in their little Texan minds, with those little 2 Texan brain cells that they rub together. And that's where I mean, if it didn't make it better, why would like just make it bigger? Just be I'm gonna make it bigger. Yeah, I guess that could be text. And it's like
I think
that
it's like
approach to
it
like
might be an
body
issue of
types.
like physical intelligence. Like if one can't accurately pour 16 ounces, just get a bigger cup, right? Can't pour 20 ounces, just get a bigger cup. We'll get a 24-ounce cup. Just make it easier for them.
This is not just people who carry extra weight in the sense of there's a specific redneck culture of like the more you eat, the more badass you are, just because like, oh, Billy Bob can eat like 10 hot dogs in one sitting, or like Billy Bob could eat like a whole pizza by himself. And it's like the idea, it's like
who eats $20 worth of hot dogs in one sitting? That's just nasty. I'm serious. That just makes my stomach curl.
Okay, there's some like American, probably racist fucking urban lore about how at some point Italians used to be like a sign of wealth to be like overfed and chubby, and as if you like, you know,
yeah, maybe in the age of barbarism,
right? And that's what they're kind of alluding to,
like 10,000 years ago,
right? As if it's only Italians that ever did that, but then the way that they frame it is also to like create this stereotype of why the Mario, you know, chubby Italian guy with the mustache became a stereotype. So they like seed one thing,
but Mario's a New Yorker. Mario's not Italian. He's a New Yorker. He's Italian
ethnically. You're thinking like an American. These are white people who didn't consider Italian people white until the mid 1900s. So that's where this like anti-Irish and like all the gingers don't have any soul shit. Like white people hated gingers until Ariel no longer was a ginger. Now they went, preserve redhead parts. Like, no, y'all were saying gingers didn't have a soul. I remember when white people, it wasn't black people. Like, that's not a black person thing to make fun of gingers. Like, it was all white people who were anti-ginger, but now they want to protect the redhead roles. Nah, we got receipts, man.
You know what's crazy is that like red hair isn't like the domain of white people. There are Asian people with red hair. There are black people with red hair. There are people from all over the place with red hair. It's just like it's a function of vitamin D and vitamin E and exposure to ultraviolet light and geographic location when you're in the womb. All sorts of factors come to play. And sometimes it doesn't always express itself, but it's a lot easier to see with people who have very like limited pigmentation. Mm-hmm. So like my hair turns red in the summer and then it turns back into like dark in winter because I don't get as much sunlight.
Yeah, not everybody's hair tans though.
Yeah.
Which is like, some people have the capacity for their hair to change color like that in the sunlight, and other people have to like mimic it with chemicals.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, yeah, the idea that only white people have red hair is pretty funny. Yeah, racists are not smart.
Although I think the ginger itself is a very distinctly like white culture thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but there's even black gingers.
I know.
In the sense of like the appearance, but yeah, black people aren't calling someone with that appearance ginger. Like I don't even know what that means, honestly. Like ginger snap, gingerbread. I don't know what the fuck.
Yeah, no. There's got to be something really. There's got to be something like some undertone there that we're unaware of because, like, what's the distinct difference between a ginger and a redhead?
I think the pale skin.
The pale skin. Okay.
Yeah. Because most redheads' hair isn't actually red, which is the craziest part. Like when you're talking about white people, it ends up being brown, but it looks red in contrast with their fucking skin.
Yeah.
And there's like this undertone of like the super pale, rosy, like contrast is what makes their brownish hair look more red. Like, yeah, there's people that have red hair, but most of the people that are in white culture and get called redheads are just like actually brunettes, which is fucking hilarious. It's like there's so much move to like make people feel more unique and as if they fucking stand out and like there's a lot of overestimation of like the beauty associated with this specific like Western aesthetic when you're in it, but it's like it's totally them gassing themselves up. And then when you compare it, it's like everybody fucking looks the same because they've all agreed that this one aesthetic is what everybody wants to aspire to. It's like if you're not blonde, if you don't have blue eyes, then if you don't have a pointy nose, then you should get surgery or do something like dye your fucking shit to get in that paradigm. And otherwise, we're not going to think that you're the upper echelon of beauty. And that culture has led to a complete homogenization of like, well, that's how you end up with Michael Jackson look like fucking Elizabeth Taylor and shit. Like Michael Jackson thinking,
man, what a strange expression of tribalism. Let's mutilate people's faces so they look right.
Yeah,
that's where.
So we all look the same.
This has got to be the weirdest version of tribalism yet.
Mm-mm.
The whole plastic face culture.
The anti-community tribe.
They're also like that's also the culture that like created like glute implants and ab musculature implants and
calf implant,
deltoid implants, which is real. It was like it's already enough that we have to carry everything around. Why put more weight on your shoulders?
Yeah. Well, that's why I thought Peacemaker was really funny in that they made fun of body dysmorphia appropriately, where it's like the character clearly had body dysmorphia. I'm sure John Cena probably has body dysmorphia. But I saw somebody posted like, it's not body dysmorphia, you're just fat phobic. Like, touche. But it's not even always about that so much as bigorexia is real. The idea that like men, or not just men, people who want to like body build never see themselves as big enough because they project what they see in like photoshopped or performance enhanced bodies, and in the mirror they never see themselves as ever actually reaching that, when sometimes they're like way beyond it even. That's like a real
I don't know, it doesn't help when you have friends like Winston who tower above you.
Yeah.
like that's always like, damn it, I'm standing next to a giant person. And it's funny is because he's like kind of on the small end in his family.
Yeah.
I've also had really tall. I've always had taller friends. It wasn't until I got to college that I started meeting people that were all about the same size. Then I realized we all are about the same size, and I just didn't realize that I was just slouching all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's like, different times a day, people will be different heights. And it's like,
Oh yeah,
I'm sure if you saw the same person at a different time of day, one of you might be taller than the other, and vice versa at another time of day. It's really crazy how much the height can change.
I had a roommate years and years ago who like 6'4", real tall, maybe 6'3", still really tall. Like he would look at door frames, when you walk under him sometimes, just because. And we were sitting next to each other, and I like stretched, and just reached for the ceiling, and I realized that my torso was longer than his. And we're looking at each other, and my eyes were like at his forehead level. I was like, "Are you sitting completely upright?" He's like, "Yeah, I am." I was like, "Wait a second, reach out." And so he reaches his arms out, and his hands had like a whole like hand length of mine, like extended. And so we're sitting there, like sticking our legs out, sticking our hands out, and like, good God, he's got like spider arms, spider legs. And it was like the first time that it occurred to me. It's like, oh yeah, torso differences. That's also a big part of it. Like it never occurred to me, like the reason that a lot of chairs are uncomfortable is because my torso is long and a lot of chairs are short.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because then you realize like it's actually really difficult for tall people to be proportionate.
Yeah.
So like either their torso is gonna look too short or too long. It's like it's once somebody gets past like 6'2", 6'3", like if you like look at them for too long, they're gonna start to look weird. Like it's gonna look like one of their hemispheres is mismatched in almost every case. It's like very, very rarely are like people who are 6'6" or 6'7" like proportionate, like symmetrical in the upper and lower hemisphere. And it's just like it's actually, people want to be in their minds like the tallest person, but then when you see all of the like actual negative sides of being tall, and then on top of that, like it's way easier to get or to be symmetrical the closer you are to the ground, in the sense of like getting a fit, like a person's body, the farther away that head gets from the ground, the more likely the symmetry is going to start to get out of proportion.
Oh yeah. Also, but finding big shoes or big gloves, extra large jacket, and not extra, I mean like extra large, big and tall jackets, because it's not just a round expansion, it's a tall expansion.
Yeah.
I've put on jackets from my tall friends before, and it's always like, holy crap, this thing is like a what you would call it, trench coat, practically down to my knees, But then you can't reach the pockets because they're down by your knees too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's got to be a whole host of strange things that really big and tall people contend with on a day-to-day basis that are completely unnoticed, that we all take for granted. Like doors are suitably sized for normal sized people, but for an extra large person, a big boned person, that's a small door. And like the idea of getting into a normal sedan might be terrifying. It's like, But finding shoes, that's got to be a real pain in the ass. Because I got like a size 10.5 shoe, and that's like the most common shoe size. And so I can rarely find shoes. I've got to order them online, and that's fine. But having extra gigantic feet, that's got to be like a nightmare. I can't imagine that shoe manufacturers are making, size 17 and up shoes in mass quantities.
No, they usually stop carrying them around 13 or 14.
Yeah. So we're talking like
ever so often you'll find like 15s.
But we're talking like special order shoes at this point. Gloves? I mean
well, and it's like when that person is that big, they need like different constructions where excuse me. That's when a shoe that's designed for a 200-pound, 5'10" person is not necessarily going to work for someone who's 6'7", 300 pounds. Even if it's like just scaled up, or especially if it's just scaled up in that. Oh yeah, that's how you get like Zion Williamson fucking completely destroying a shoe because it wasn't meant for that type of G-force to happen.
The rubber density, the foam density has to be should be fine-tuned to a weight range and an impact rating and for an intended use. But I don't think most shoe companies are. I think they're doing that to a lesser extent with like a range of weights that it can be used, but they're like at the upper end. That's where we would see like excessive wear or early wear signs.
Well, it's like,
but even boots, like with like heavy duty Vibram soles, wear out over time. So, the shoes that I'm aware of that don't wear out very quickly. There's a company in Africa that takes old tires and they convert them into shoes or sandals. I'm pretty sure those things are going to last like longer than anyone would expect. But even then, who wants to wear a tire on their foot? Tires are heavy. They're not really made for comfort.
Yeah, the shoes that I've had with the most miles that have lasted the longest don't have a normal sole, and it's more like a waffle maker hollow like cube type deal on the sole.
Yeah.
Where it's like I think they have to adjust for the weight issue, like make the shoe as light as possible to have the most structure. But I think it's like because of the hollow space in between, it's like it evenly distributes the force of the stride more or something where
well, I've got a pair of boots that are 20 years old. They're like old school leather stitched boots, and I still use them. I use them for like yard work. But the rubber sole is really heavy. And when I first put them on, I have to adjust because they're heavier than my hiking boots. They're heavier than like the biggest boots that I've got. They outweigh my snow boots. But they don't wear out. They're just like tough as can be. But they're not comfortable. I wouldn't want to walk very far in them. They're good for doing like, home repair, home maintenance, yard work. But I wouldn't want to drop anything on my foot in them because it would be harder. It would be very difficult to get my foot back out because they're just a leather shoe, really, when it comes down to it. But they're like 20 years old, and the soles are, they're just solid rubber. There's got to be something to it. Like I'm sure it's like a Vibram sole, like that kind of boot rubber. that likes to shed dirt and all that stuff. But it's like, I can't imagine that being on a skateboard, a skating shoe, or a running shoe, or a cross training shoe, or just a tennis shoe, or a sneakers. I can't imagine that density of rubber not being sheared off from like the cushion absorbent layer. It has to be like stitched to the body of the shoe itself. That's probably not a very good review of those shoes. They're like, I mean, in terms of longevity, sure, but they're just not comfortable. I think that's where a lot of these things. Wait, that's where the rubber hits the road kind of deal. Like they're either utilitarian, like those boots, and they last a long time as long as I take care of them, or they are more comfortable and they provide good support and they are nimble, but we just will end up destroying them because they're not designed to last forever. They're designed to fail before they break your ankle or something like that.
Yeah, it also is really getting the right shoe for the right scenario. Like that's the hiking boot isn't going to be the same one you use when you're like working on a car.
Yeah. The hiking boot's not, I only use the hiking boot on dirt and gravel. I don't like using it on pavement because that's not what it's for. I want it to, well, in woods, climbing over trees, stuff like that. You know, put them on at the parking lot when I'm in the woods, and then wander off. But I don't wear those things to go to the gas station and go to the market. That, you know, the work boot thing was really weird. It always struck me as odd, like seeing people wearing work boots at school, like construction style work boots. Timberland, they like really capitalized on that whole work boot aesthetic. But they also make work boots. And hiking boots. I had a pair of Timberlands. They were actually really nice hiking shoes. But they had more in common with like a running shoe with an aggressive tread and a heavy upper sole, heavy leather upper than like an actual tennis shoe. They were pretty rugged.
Yeah, my favorite boots have always been more like running shoes on the inside,
Yeah,
and like work boots on the outside. It's like those are the most versatile boot in the sense of, yeah, everything isn't going to work in every situation, but like a forgiving, if not gel sole or cushion on the inside with I guess they call it insole, with at least some sort of like not necessarily running tread or hiking tread, but some boots don't have any tread at all, and then you're just like closer to a dress shoe. And you're just like sliding around and shit. It's like, man, especially with all that weight, that's a lot.
Dress boots are always really amusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what is that? What's that for? Is it just to make it more difficult to get off later, or is it to cook the feet and make them smell really robust?
Well, and that's where you can't use dress shoe socks with boots.
No.
And a lot of times, like, you have to kind of use athletic socks.
Yeah.
Just for that reason. I don't know what it is with well, I guess.
Well, polyester doesn't have wicking properties like polypropylene does. Polyester will, it helps to move moisture away, but it also kind of just holds on to it. Polypropylene will allow your body heat to help evaporate away. Cotton holds on. Cotton is hydrophilic, which means that it absorbs water and it just absorbs water. So once it gets wet, it's pretty much ruined. It's done. Wool, of course, is like the best at wicking away moisture, but who wants to wear wool socks like in the summer? That's like asking for robust.
Well,
foot.
it's actually really good about regulating temperature. So like I would wear wool pants in the summer, and not really get sweaty.
Yeah.
So
Wool's
it's like
great.
deceptively good at.
I just don't like wool socks in the summer. I've worn wool socks in the summer. It's not as fun as it sounds. Like when it's cold out, that itchy sensation that goes away after about 10 minutes is great. But for whatever reason in the summer, like sweating through them, I didn't like that. That's why I like polypropylene. Although polypropylene is a base layer and then wool socks on the outside, like when it's cold out, that's like unbeatable. I think silk pants are the best though.
Yeah, those are hard to come by though, with like the guarantee that they're not gonna
Just disintegrate.
or give you fake fucking silk.
Oh yeah. I got really lucky at a Goodwill one time. I found a Tommy Bahama pair of brown silk pants. And dress pants, dress slacks. And they turned out to be the most comfortable pair of pants that I've had ever in my life. They felt like I wasn't wearing pants. It was like the same kind of sensation as UFOs, except they didn't look ridiculous. And I've never been able to find them again. I'm pretty sure that brand is defunct now. Man, if the British hadn't been such assholes, we'd all be wearing silk pants right now. I'm serious.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, totally.
We'd have silk shirts, we'd have silk pants, everyone would be comfortable. Ugh.
Yeah. So on another note, I've been playing Gotham Knights, and
Oh, that's the one where they killed Batman right off the bat, right?
yeah. And I was like, because of the reviews and the way it had been review bombed, I was like almost not gonna buy it just because they made it seem like the controls are horrible and the camera's horrible and you can't lock on, and there's all this stuff that people are complaining about. And then I ended up buying it. I'm like, it almost feels like half of the people reviewing games don't know how to fucking play video games, and I don't know how they got these jobs where they're getting paid to be influencers and play video games as like their job, but they have no fucking business reviewing these games.
So wait,
because this game is fucking amazing.
were they mad because it wasn't a different game?
Basically, they're mad that it wasn't an Arkham game, which is not the same company. It's not the same series. First off, so then as somebody who's an avid fucking comic book reader, from the very first scene, the Batman suit, they're clearly referencing the fucking future state, like Batman. There's like specific suits where you can look at the logo.
The more modern Batman is what you're talking about,
right? No, it's not more modern. It's specifically the future state Batman. There's like right now they're in the Dark Crisis. There's like, for anybody who doesn't know, in the DC universe, they have crisis events. That's specifically what they're called because there's this thing called crisis energy that they've used as the basis of what causes these crisis events. So over like the last 40 years, I think, maybe even 50 years now, they've had crisis events every 10 years, that roughly every 10 years. And the reason they do it is because it allows everybody in that universe to cross over and then it allows the company to do like a soft or a hard reset with the storylines that they've built. If something didn't work, then they'll change it during the crisis event. So there was like there was the metal event, then there was death metal.
Oh, I remember this suit. It's the one that like it reminded me of Wolverine a lot.
Well, yeah, because it was yellow.
Yeah.
That's
and it's more of an X-Men style suit than a Batman style suit.
Yeah. But
it's like a cross between Wolverine and Cable, but with a Batman logo.
Yeah, that's not far off. So it's that. I think if it's the one in your mind that I'm also thinking of, that's the Batman suit that they start off this game with. So it's clearly like a newer canon mythos like setup that they're using. So anybody who doesn't read comic books, they're not going to see that part. But then if the only thing you've been exposed to is like Michael Keaton and Christian Bale, and there's like these so-called Batman fans who like only watch certain movies, and then they don't even go beyond those things, and anything that's beyond that, they just don't like it. So they're like impossible to please if it's not within this certain rigid paradigm. So all those people have basically been review bombing this game, and then when you go play it, it's like not only is the game fucking amazing. So let me make this clear. In every launch, in every game in modern times, there's gonna be like bugs in the first like couple months of release, because there's just code bugs that get like discovered over the course of hundreds of thousands of people playing a game, or however many, and doing things that the developers couldn't imagine. So there's going to be bugs when games get released. That's just common. But aside from the normal standard bugs, there's not really much wrong with this game. And in fact, they took everything that Avengers game did wrong and did it right. So all the people, I guarantee all of the people who were hating on Gotham Knights also hated on Avengers. So it's like, at least if you're going to be internally consistent, if people hated on Gotham Knights, you should go back and they should like Avengers. But I guarantee you they won't, because these people aren't gamers, and it seems like they can't be happy with anything unless it's within a very small like slice of what they can understand. So I'm like, as somebody who's, I think I've put like 10 hours into the game now, it's crazy to see these people have these jobs that then come out and then just like completely trash something that's actually fun, where then you see the things that they'll like rate up, and it's not actually like quote unquote fun. It's like
how does Bruce sound? How does Batman sound in the game? Does he sound like Batman?
Yeah.
Okay, then I don't see a problem. Like, I mean, do the characters sound like the characters? I mean, that's the thing. Is like what I've read about the game thus far.
It's not a Batman game though. So
I know
that's like, so my thing is, as somebody who's a huge Batman fan, we gotta let Gotham live, and Gotham fucking be its own thing aside from Batman, if we actually want Batman to exist too, because otherwise it becomes so stale because it's only about this one person that it ends up only catering to that vapid audience that then can't handle a story about Jason Todd or the story about Barbara Gordon. And then they're like, well, this isn't Bruce Wayne. Well, of course, it's fucking Barbara Gordon. This is about Dick Grayson. And we finally got a fucking Nightwing game. And it's not just Nightwing, but when you're playing as Nightwing, it's like this is the game. If you're a Nightwing fan, this is the fucking game we've been waiting for. Or if you're like a Jason Todd fan, this is the shit you've been waiting for.
So then
But
people
these
are
people,
mad that it's not a Batman game.
yeah, and then they try to
But
like
it's not
make it
supposed to
seem
be.
as if it's a failure, and then that dissuades other people from trying it, and then it does make the game a failure, and then there's no more fucking Gotham Knights. So it's like weird that there are these people who don't know how to play games, who can't enjoy things, who then want other people to not be able to have these things because then they go out and badmouth it because it doesn't
My
fit their experience.
my preferred first-person shooter control configuration is called Southpaw Boxer, and it is the sticks are swapped, and then it preferences melee on one of the triggers. It's a Halo configuration. If I only played with a Southpaw Boxer configuration, actually it's more than Halo. Turok also enabled that kind of configuration. I would be unable to play literally every single good first-person shooter that ever existed, and probably an excessive amount of just raw action video games, first-person action video games. Like, and that's just on a control configuration level. That's absurd.
Like first-person games.
I don't really play them anymore. I mean, I like.
I'll play them.
I like airplane games. I like flying games, and that's it. And car games.
If it's a physical person, I like third-person games personally for various reasons. Mostly, it's more than likely that you'll actually kick. So if I know how to kick in real life, going to first person restricts me because they're not putting in a kick button. If they like, some games do, and those are actually more fun.
Yeah.
But if they made it so that like if I could run up on somebody and fucking kick them as an option instead of only like
punching them,
arm, yeah, it would. Then I would have the freedom that third person games give me that I'm looking for. So it's like, it's not that I can't enjoy first person, but I want a freedom in these games that if like everybody's not going to know how to kick, so everybody's not going to like have that inclination. If I want to run up and like kick somebody, maybe 1 out of 100 people have that inclination when they're in that same situation. So the developer's not going to cater to that 1 out of 100 when 99 people are perfectly fine not kicking. I get that, which is why I still play mostly third-person games that allow me to kick people. So this is where it feels like a lot of these first-person shooter preference types are then coming in and like reviewing like the Gotham Knights and then
that's what I mean.
Review bombing it.
Like if I only played if I only played games that allowed that configuration preference and only allowed one style of gameplay, then I would be like limited to 3% of the available games. Not even that, probably like less than 1% of the available games. And so then to judge all first-person shooters on that one criteria just because the interface isn't what I like, isn't my preferred interface type, or because the storytelling method is slight variation of a storytelling method that I prefer, that's just like, well, those are just matters of taste. If they want to build a video game, they should do it, and they probably make a great game. Apparently,
maybe.
I mean, no, I'm being
maybe
facetious, but they probably wouldn't.
Well, but that's where like that Dr. Disrespect dude,
yeah.
Is making a game, and I'm interested to see if it just ends up being like all vibes, no plot, and you know, it's like just these game elements loosely stuck together. Because I don't imagine that making being good at playing games necessarily makes anybody good at making them, or vice versa. So I think whatever his studio puts out, it may be good, but I really doubt it. So, well, okay. And on the gameplay, I think a lot of people confuse complexity with a
Depth.
lack of repetition. Yes, exactly. So it's like if you have a game that has like 16 different buttons for different moves and like then you can do different combinations to have like an infinite number of combinations, they would think that that's better than a game that only gives you like one button for melee and one button for ranged, with the rhythm to then be what changes the different types of animations associated with those buttons. And it's like, at the end of the day, we're just triggering animation. So if you have to like go to a different button combination and like that's where you feel like the complexity comes in, that's fine. But then like with Gotham Knights, you have like one melee button and you short press it for a light attack, long press it for a heavy attack, and then double press it for like a critical. So there's like one button, but you press it at different rhythms for different animations. And then depending on the sequence, you'll get a different animation. So like as far as removing the barrier to immersion, sometimes one button is better at removing that barrier than like a bunch of complex inputs.
Oh,
and sometimes
that's
the
very
complex
true.
inputs are better.
So, like with Star Trek Online, when I'm flying around in space, I absolutely want to use the keyboard because the keyboard has all the keys, and I can map the controls however way I want, and that's great. And I can play like when I beam down to the surface and go around and blast shit, blow things up. Use my space wizard powers. I can use a keyboard and it's fine, but it's more fun to use an Xbox controller because that's what I'm fluent with in terms of like third-person gaming. And so it's just more fun. It's a more fluid interface. I can do things with a keyboard that are just as complex, and it's just as useful an interface. But it's just more fun with the controller. But as soon as I beam back up to the ship, it's back to the keyboard because it's a superior interface. I also preference a flight stick and throttle when I'm playing any flying game over a controller. The same as I would preference a wheel and pedal system for a driving game. There is a superior control interface, but I don't think that it comes down to. It's like at that point it's not a complexity of triggering animations. It's like it's an efficiency of interface more or less. Also, flying with a keyboard sucks.
Oh yeah, if you're like comparing a keyboard to a proper flight stick, yeah, it's not even remotely the same.
Even a really oversized controller with large joysticks isn't the same as like a throttle and flight stick.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, I got a fucking arcade joystick for fighting games, and that like
changes everything, doesn't it?
It changes everything. It's, you don't need to get a whole arcade cabinet when you can just get the fucking controller.
Yeah.
Where I see a lot of people like getting cabinets now for one game. Man, it's like, no, get the controller. Get the fucking controller.
I've actually thought about the complexities of building my own cabinet around because I've got a bunch of TVs, around like a 42-inch TV, and then building a board to house all the buttons and the joysticks. And then the longer I think about it, it's always like, do I really want to stand up like that every time just to play a fighting game? Do I need to get into like the poses? Probably.
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty important that you like flex your legs and your back when you're like putting in those badass combos and swirling the joystick just right.
Well, it's like you're sitting. It's fine, but you're not going to be able to have the same level of attention as when you're standing.
Oh,
It's
no.
just not.
Well, you can't engage your entire body when you're sitting, but
Yeah.
you can engage your entire body and then tap into like those reflexes, those twitch motions that start in your feet. And it's crazy how much of like a martial arts would actually translate to playing a video game, but it all starts in your feet and in your foundation.
Well, and that's why
you actually reminded me a lot of when you were talking about the complaints about the way the gameplay for that game. It's like Street Fighter. And I'm glad you mentioned Street Fighter. Street Fighter has 6 buttons and an 8-way D-pad, and it doesn't need anything else. It's like the simplest fighting game. It's been the fighting interface of choice, emulated by every other fighting game practically for like 35 years practically.
Yeah, and the complexity comes from the interaction.
Yeah.
And it's not just, it's like, yeah.
It comes from the gameplay. It comes from playing the game, not the
number of buttons.
Yeah. Although it does have a lot of buttons. It was like, it had more buttons than any other game.
For its time, yeah.
For the first 2 iterations of the game. And then when Street Fighter 3 happened, 6 buttons at an arcade console was common.
Yeah, it's like 6 is not many now in the sense of we have 8 that are active while we're playing, but then we have the fucking start, select, the D-pad, and then the fucking, in many cases, like the home button. So there's really like
2 triggers. Sometimes
upwards of 12.
Sometimes there's
12
pinky and ring finger buttons on the controllers.
Yeah,
controllers are crazy nowadays.
Yeah, I have one that has pinky and ring finger, and it's like, if you don't actually plan to use them, those end up becoming more detrimental.
Yeah, you squeeze the controller and some random crap happens. It's like, no, I don't want to do that.
But then you realize it's like, it does give you the capacity to give give your fingers a break. Like,
yeah,
if you use your thumb for jump or something, then you can like switch to a pinky or something. And like, it feels weird at first, but it does take some like, but it's weird. Then because you're not using your thumb as frequently, it's not as like ready to activate when you need it. So it's almost like there's a sweet spot of being ready to activate that letting something relax too much takes it out of that sweet spot.
Yeah. No, there are like alertness states that you just can't engage if you're seated. If you're too comfortable, you cannot be completely alert.
Well, okay. So one of the biggest gripes that I've heard about the game is that you have to like grind to build your character strength, and like a lot of it is like riding around like fighting crime. And I'm like, why else would you play a fucking Gotham Knights game?
Yeah, isn't that the point?
That's exactly the point. Exactly. So what also
do these people want to go out and fight like high level bosses right off the bat?
Well, yes, but I don't think that they are the type that want to go out and fight, in the sense of, at the core, even if it's a fantasy, you have to have some inclination to be that person. So if you're just playing a video game and you don't actually care about like fighting crime, it's going to feel tedious. Yeah. But if you actually understand the psyche of like why Batman doesn't get any sleep and why he's out like fighting criminals, then you realize half the episodes or the times we see him is not the whole picture, and we're only getting the most interesting elements. So there are these like, most of the time it's probably boring as fuck. He's out just waiting for shit to happen, or just like riding around listening to the fucking city. Like, that's what Batman is doing. You only get to see the cool parts.
So like Batman Batman the real world, like 90% of the show would just be him sitting up on next to his gargoyle, just looking down on Gotham, saying like, yep,
in his fucking diaper.
Yep, that's Gotham.
You know,
just waiting for like, something to happen.
Batman Batman gonna take a piss break?
Yeah, right. He's gonna take off that giant rubber suit every fucking time.
So it's
No,
like
he wears a catheter and it just drips out by his ankle. Oh.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he's got some sort of still suit type deal, but it's like they don't think about that shit though. Again, it's like if we're going to have a video game where it can't just be only boss battles, because that's not fun.
Batman's a detective. Batman and his the people who aspire to protect Gotham are detectives. They work their way up from the ground. They don't just barge in on Scantoni and threaten him. They gather evidence, and then they might happen to upon like some big deal at the docks or in a basement warehouse or something, or a parking garage, and they'll kick some ass. But they're not like showing up with a legal brief and saying we're filing charges. Like,
well, and so you do that in the game, and I saw people saying that when you're like collecting evidence, it's like you're doing it for nothing. When you collect evidence, it's like it pops up on your radar the culprit of the crime that you just collected evidence for. It's almost like they didn't connect that's what happened.
So they created a mechanism to inform the player of what they're supposed to do, their tasks, and they call it evidence. And they're shitty because they don't want to go do the tasks. They don't want to play the game. So
yes, and in the process, they're making it seem as if the tasks were disconnected when they were directly connected.
They just weren't able to connect the dots.
Yeah,
well, they're just poor detectives.
Right, and it's like, either they were poor detectives or intentionally misleading the audience to make it seem like the detective work was useless or not actual detective work.
I'm going to say that they're probably, I don't know, if they're not a good detective, then are they intelligent enough to intentionally mislead the audience?
But at the same time, there's no detective work in Michael Keaton's Batman.
Oh, that's true.
That Batman was not a detective. Technically, he's detective in name only, but there's no detective in that story. So when you have an audience that is introduced to Michael Keaton and then gets to Christian Bale, which is detective light, there's some, I'll be nice and be like, yeah, there's some mystery in there, but it's not real. It's only a mystery to anybody who doesn't know the like Bruce Wayne backstory or has never read a comic book in their life. Like only that person would find any sort of mystery in the Christian Bale iteration or the Christopher Nolan, whatever you want to call it.
I loved the first couple seasons of Batman, the animated series, because it was still a detective story.
Yeah, it was totally detective.
The criminals didn't have superpowers. They had cars and guns and bats or batons. And he used his jujitsu and his array of batarangs and the bat gun, which wasn't even, it was just a grappling hook, and smoke bombs. And he collected evidence like a detective, and he gave it over to Gordon so Gordon could take it to the DA. Like it was actually a detective story. And so this variation on the theme of superhero Batman, I enjoy it. I'm not gonna lie. I as much as I want to rag on Batman building a Gundam so he could fight Darkseid, like, I mean, realistically in that universe, who's gonna actually fight Darkseid?
No, I enjoy it. I don't get me wrong.
It's funny,
Batman's
but
not a detective. I totally do.
But at his
that's like
core,
one
that's
part
what
of the
he is.
spectrum. Yeah, where it's like, you know, it doesn't have to be detective all the time, but at the core, it's a detective.
I think once we strip the detective from Batman, Batman is just a really violent dude with a lot of money.
Yeah, he has to. Yeah, otherwise,
like without the detective work,
a guy who never went to therapy.
Yeah, he's the Punisher dressed up in a bat suit.
Yeah, basically.
Well, that actually makes the Punisher more interesting. That's like Batman without the financial backing.
Yeah, Batman and Punisher aren't far from each other. I think that's where like Batman gets compared to Daredevil a lot more often than he should. I think where
I think,
they have some like
yeah,
surface
their cowls both
common.
have weird ear things. Their cowls are probably made by the same designer, just different paint. Batman wears a cape. Daredevil doesn't wear a cape. They both are martial arts experts.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
about that's all I
so
can
is
really come up
Punisher
with.
though.
Yeah, Punisher's also a martial arts expert,
Um,
and he wants people to know who's about to punish them.
yeah, which again, I think.
He's like a little bit more honest with his brutality than in that regard.
But,
You know, that'd
well,
be.
and it,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Well, I was gonna say like, you know, the way that this story is playing out, um, everybody knows. Okay, everybody knows the story starts with Batman dying, and it doesn't really seem like a trick. So they start off the game with like I think it's like 15 or 20 minutes of like intro footage that
That's
sets
awesome.
up the story. Yeah,
They
so that's
give
where I'm
you
like,
a full TV episode.
basically. So that's where I'm like, anybody who's like complaining about it probably skipped that because that alone was like this cool, you know, like you said, it's a whole episode of a TV show that's basically the introduction to this game, and then as you play it, it's like they seed it in about I think maybe 5-minute videos at a time. So it's like nothing's really happening
I mean,
longer than
everything
like
that
5-minute
you've described,
videos.
a Batman game that doesn't have where you don't get to actually play as Batman, where he actually gets killed right off the bat, and then you've got to figure out how to do the thing in Gotham. That actually sounds really awesome because
It is.
let's be really honest. None of us are fucking Batman. Nobody
Right,
is Batman.
exactly.
None of us actually want to be Batman,
Exactly.
but we want to be cool with Batman, and we want to have all access to all those abilities and toys and stuff, and be badasses in Gotham. But none of us actually. Nobody really wants to be Batman deep down inside because nobody wants to cross through that threshold. Bruce doesn't even want to cross through the threshold, but he can't come back.
And I think they even say some shit like that in the game at some point. Like
Man,
in
now
a conversation.
I want to play this game even more now.
Yeah. So there's a whole like, man, you can play Spy Hunter in the game
Really?
because there's a fucking arcade machine in the upper floor of the cave.
That
of
game
the
was
Belfry.
so much fun in the arcade because it had that wheel and it was like you could shoot stuff. That was the precursor to Twisted Metal.
So when I was playing Spy Hunter for like 20 minutes, and I'm like, why would anybody ever say anything negative about this game?
What
like,
a cool Easter
it's
egg.
not perfect. Yeah, exactly. It's not a perfect. It's at launch, so it's not perfect. No game's perfect on launch day. I get that,
Unless it's
but you can
Ace
fucking play
Combat
Spy
7.
Hunter. They just let you play Spy Hunter in this game. Like, I know it's always like cheap when you add other games into a game, but it's an easy way to ensure people are having fun, which is where I'm like,
No, mini games are great.
that's when that's when you're thinking about all the different types of players. Like at some point, if you're bored of like running around and getting rid of criminals, well, go play Spy Hunter. You don't even have to exit this game to do something completely different.
They give you an episode, a Batman animated series episode filler story to get you into the game. They give you a way to take a break from the game in the game. And they let you be part of the Batman microcosm. Like, what's more to ask for? get to prove yourself.
Well,
you get to be Nightwing.
and there's a TV in the space, so I imagine they're probably eventually going to have it like Grand Theft Auto, where you can just sit and watch TV, and they'll have some like maybe they'll play the Batman animated series or some shit.
That would be dope.
Who knows? Well, because that's like in Fortnite. In Fortnite, you can watch Dragon Ball Z episodes now.
You can also go fishing in Fortnite. I understand.
You can do all kinds of shit in Fortnite, but you can sit and watch episodes of Dragon Ball Z in the fucking game as part of the. I think they made a deal with Crunchyroll.
Do you get like experience points for it?
I don't know. I mean,
that would be pretty.
I wouldn't
dope.
doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it because it's probably like
if you watch
they
like
probably,
1,000 minutes of DBZ, you can like go Super Saiyan for 10 minutes.
Well, again, it's probably like a badge that you get for watching television or some shit. So they encourage people to do it. I doubt they'd add a feature without making a badge for it.
Well, I learned about the fishing because I saw a buddy of mine playing Fortnite, and he dropped a fishing pole so he could pick up some other item, and I just said, "Wait, was that a fishing pole?" He said, "Oh yeah, I go fishing all the time." That's cool stuff. Mini games are great. I wish more games had mini games. I guess a lot of games have, essentially they have a mini game that's built like a tutorial. It's like, this is how you play the game. The tutorial levels are always easy and they never really reflect actual gameplay.
Yeah. I think it depends on what licenses the company has too, because like,
oh sure,
anything Sega has, a lot of times they'll have a full arcade in the game. It's old Sega games, which is cool as hell.
You know, that's like a testament to how much power is actually required to run a Sega game, like a Master System game.
Yeah.
Or a Genesis game even. I bet 32X games, like even by today's standards, are just like low resource requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, 32X wasn't. I mean, for the time it was high demand, but now it's like, yeah, you probably run that shit on your phone easy.
It'll never cease to amaze me how far our handheld computers have come, because I remember the first laptop that I ever used. It was a Mac PowerBook, and it had a trackball, and it had like a I'm serious, it had like a 320 by 240 monochrome display, the size of like, actually I think it might have been about the size of a cell phone now, or like a smartphone now. Could barely see it. The backlighting was, I mean, to call it luminescent would be a kind of a joke. It had a backlight, very similar to the backlight on like a digital watch from the 80s. And now they fit in our pockets, and they have nearly entire day runtimes, and they have eyes that can see in the dark, and they have ears that can hear things that we can't. You can use the accelerometer to measure distances. That blows my mind.
We've come a long way in a very short time.
Yeah. It didn't take long at all.
Yeah.
It was like the whole thing was just waiting for a materials revolution.
Yeah. I wonder what's going to happen in the next 30. If it's like, can we keep that trajectory?
No. We're still humans are still fighting over the the most necessary resources. We're not going to be able to get anything better than what we got now. Shit.
Man, if we could just stop fighting and just try to like keep that same
Exceptional Randos Show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.